What's going on, guys? So, one common thing that I see happen when people first start their weight loss journey is that they don't set themselves up for success, right? So, they'll face common problems when they first start that may cause them to lose momentum or lose motivation or not be as disciplined and consistent. So, I wanted to discuss some of the things that happened to me when I first started and how I overcame them. So, for example, when I first started my journey, when I the my reasoning for starting my first few times were very shallow, were very surface level. Like, for example, wanting to look good in a tank top at the beach or wanting to fit into a certain piece of clothing for an event or something of that nature. Don't get me wrong; those are good goals when you have very little to lose or you're just trying to look good for a certain event. But when you start from where I did, where your relationship with food was so unhealthy, you can't start with those more surface level goals because they're not gonna keep you going after that event has passed, right? So the first few times I tried when I got to that goal or when I passed that event, I wasn't really able to find a motivation to continue and stay consistent with it. So what would end up happening is I would just end up going back to my old ways or going back to my old habits. And that was never a recipe for success because my mental was still not there to create the sustainable changes. So when you first start, you really kind of have to start from a place of wanting more for yourself. You have to create a goal outside of yourself that's more aligned with your purpose, right? So, say you have a certain goal that you've always had in the back of your head of how you want your life to kind of unfold, or like a certain profession, or a certain life you want to live, certain lifestyle, certain family life, certain place you want to live. You have to connect your reason for getting healthy to that because you can't connect it when you're starting from where I was and you don't have a good self image of yourself. You can't rely on just wanting to better your health for the sake of it, right? Because the reason you got that big is because you lacked a level of respect for yourself, whether that be because of trauma or because of certain adversities or certain life experiences that made you feel less than. You have to you have to kind of turn it outwards at the start, at least. Eventually you do develop that self-love on the journey because you heal just naturally by wanting better for your life and for the people around you. You start to heal internally too, and that's one thing that I didn't realize when I first started my journey. So when you first start, you have to start from a place of what do I want my life to look like and how is my health going to impact me getting to that goal. So that is number one. Number two, I see is people start wanting to be perfect or wanting to be 100% on point, very strict. They want it over with. They don't. They're not thinking about the fact that they're going to have to sustain whatever they're doing for the rest of their lives. So what I would say is start by making small changes that you're able to stay consistent with rather than trying to just jump on board right away. So for me, when I first started, I never knew how many calories I was having at my biggest because I never wanted to track it. But I've years later, now that I have a healthy relationship with food, I've kind of gone back and done rough estimates of what my day would look like, and I was easily at 5 to 10,000 calories easily per day. Of course, I was gaslighting myself into saying that it was only like 3,000 at the most, but that was just me trying to make myself feel better at the time. So when I first started the journey, obviously I wasn't, you know, wanting to go too strict at the start. So what I had started doing the first few times I wanted to lose weight, I would try fasting or juice cleanses or Atkins or keto. Those didn't really work because obviously they're tougher to maintain long term. So the time that really kind of stuck with me and made it consistent was when I started with just small lifestyle changes. So like when I was in school in college during my junior year when I first started this journey, I would get Chick-fil-A every morning, right? Because we had one on campus. So it was easy to just stop in for breakfast on the way or something like that. And what I did when I first started, what made me most successful, instead of getting the chicken minis when I don't know if that's what you call them, but they're the biscuit sandwiches, the minis with the chicken nugget in the middle. I know, horrible looking back, horrible way to start your day. So what I would get instead is I would get just the chicken, or I would get like a wrap. I would get something a lot healthier, and I would make those small swaps. Or like if I went to Starbucks, instead of getting the frappuccino or the iced mocha, I would get like the like it just an iced coffee, an iced latte with oat milk or something like that. Something to try to reduce my caloric intake. So that's number two. Don't don't shoot for perfection when your habits were not good at the start, because you need to slowly build over time. Start with the small swaps, start doing what you can to slowly make those changes, and eventually they compound. It's about being 1% better every day. You're not trying to go from being, uh, you know, completely undisciplined to being an IFBB pro, right? You can't do that. That's impossible going from one extreme to the other right away. You can slowly build over it. I would say third is trying to compare yourself to those around you. So, say you're starting your journey at the same time as someone, and you're both at a similar weight, right? Or maybe they're a little bigger, a little skinnier than you. And when you're starting and you're keeping tabs on your journey, you may feel like if they're losing faster than you or slower than you might feel like you're not doing enough or you're doing too much. And what I would say for this is really kind of look at what you're doing. Don't focus on them, because they could be doing something unhealthy as well, or they could be doing too much as well, or it could just be a difference in bodies. We're all different people. We all lose a different rate no matter what we're doing. So I would say focus on you, focus on what you're doing. As long as you're doing what you need to do, being in a calorie deficit and you're seeing progress and you're making the slow, sustainable changes, just keep doing what you're doing. Now, obviously, if you want to lose a little quicker, you can go into a steeper calorie deficit. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that because it's less sustainable, like I said, and you're potentially putting yourself in danger of being malnourished in a sense, not having enough fuel to function throughout the day. So I would say just don't focus on what the people around you are doing. Focus on your own journey, because at the end of the day, you can't help others if you're not helping yourself, and you can't compare yourself to others who might know less or more than you, right? So I just focus on yourself on the journey. And then the final one I would say is make sure that you are honest with yourself through the journey. So, what I mean by that, right, is when you're tracking your calories, we have a tendency, it's our human nature to estimate that we're eating less than what we are. Because think about our survival instincts being in the wild. When we first started as humans, we had to hunt for our food. We didn't know if we were getting a stable source of food, stable supply. So what we would have to do is we would have to, you know, eat when we had the food available. We couldn't just, slowly graze and just wait. So naturally our human instincts, even though we've evolved several thousands of years from that original primal state, our initial human instinct is to try to eat as much as we can, because in the back of our minds we never know where that next meal is coming from. Even though we have a plentiful supply here currently, our evolution just hasn't caught up quite yet. So with that being said, what will happen is our brains will trick us into thinking we're eating less, or thinking we're eating better than what we are. So the biggest way of being honest with yourself is tracking. And I know a lot of people might not like doing that when they first start out because it can be a bit tedious, a bit aggravating to accurately track what you're eating because let's face it, if we think we're eating some way for years and suddenly we realize how much we were eating, it can feel like a shock. Or on the other end, it could feel like not enough food. But what I would say is just keep tracking. Track little by little. You don't have to track fully right away. That goes back to the perfection thing. Just try to track as much as you can at the beginning of your journey because it allows you to be honest with yourself about what you're consuming. Because if so, say you're having peanut butter, this is one that got me all the time. You get a regular spoon, your kitchen spoon that you would eat like soup with or ice cream with, and you scoop that, call that a tablespoon. That's not a tablespoon because a tablespoon is a certain size, certain measurement serving that you're supposed to have. When you get the spoon, you can pile it up. You can pile it up. You can do extra. You can lick the spoon, and you could be having 3, 4 tablespoons in what you think is one, and then you're way overdoing the serving. That's like what almost 400 calories right there. And it's little things like that where you could be tricking yourself into consuming more than what you think you are. That's one thing I still struggle with. Like I still struggle with wanting to track things, especially if I'm super hungry. You don't want to take the time to track. You don't want to. You want to just eat, right? So it's about holding yourself accountable. Even what you could do is if you're getting ready for the week, what I'll do is I will measure everything out for each day at like on Sunday or Monday. Measure everything out for each day throughout the week. So that way I'm scheduled. There's no excuse to overeat or miss a meal or try to make a substitution that's not really on plan because you're it's already prepared for you, right? So it's about being honest with yourself, holding yourself accountable, and tracking closely what you're eating. And on some other notes, I would say just take it slow. It's a journey. It's not something that should be rushed because at the end of the day, you're not trying to hit a goal on the scale because the scale can be misconceiving. You can be holding much of water weight. You can be holding much of muscle mass. You could be holding much of fat too. So don't rely just on the scale. Don't rely just on any way of measurement. Don't try to make that your goal because that's how you're going to burn out. That's how you're going to lose motivation, lose the willpower to keep going. So just look at it. Don't look at it as a diet. Look at it as a healthy lifestyle because 10, 5, 10 years from now, you're not going to think about, oh, were you perfect on that meal plan? You're going to realize, oh, I've made a lot of good steps, good small habit building to get me to the point I am now, right? And that's really what we want. We don't want a crash diet, cycling up and down crash diets, because that's not healthy either. That's not healthy either because they work. They can work because they put you in calorie deficit, but they also can do the opposite. So say for keto, for example, you think you're eating healthy because you're not eating carbs, but then you're going to cook something in pounds of butter. Well, that's just as many calories. So you're not equaling out what you should. Say on the other end, you do vegan or vegetarian as a way to lose weight, and you're having a lot more carbs, but you're not having enough protein or fat. Well, you're never going to be full enough. You're never going to be satiated enough to stay in a calorie deficit. So, like I said, they can both work, but they also can do the opposite and cause you to gain weight too. So it's all about creating the healthy habits and making sure that you're doing what you need to do, tracking, staying accountable to hit your goals. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you next time.